lots of people think, and I thought before, that you give someone a pitch deck and then you're like, so give me the money, this is how I'm going to spend it. No, 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 no. You model every single penny that you're going to spend. Competitors are not a bad thing. They are a good thing, because it shows, unless you're fucking reinventing the wheel, it shows proof of concept. People invest in people's visions and stories. It's just not going to help you because you're going to get called out on it. You're much better off to be like, yeah, I can see why you would think that we would be interchangeable, but this is what makes us better, or we're like really concentrated on customer experience, or we're really concentrated on sustainability. And I can say that, you know, this was a very successful and oversubscribed funding round. We pitched for 6 weeks because we wanted to talk to all the people that we wanted to talk to and thought would be good investors, and we ended those 6 weeks with 6 term sheets. That Gen Z millennial crossover audience are people who are really care about brand values, and they're also the audience who are the earlier adopters of activewear. So how the fuck have people only put this together at a price point that is largely inaccessible to these people? Good morning, good afternoon, good night. I'm wearing what looks like a tabard, so welcome. Trying out some new things for my style, trying to look a bit put together. I have a very exciting video today, which is a contrast to my usual very unexciting videos. Like, I feel like my personal brand when it comes to YouTube is like, how much boredom for the viewer can I convey? Few things. This has been announced on Instagram, in the press, this, that and the other. We very excitingly closed a seed funding round for TALA, my activewear brand that I founded in 2019. We'd never raised funding before, so it was entirely what's classed as self-funded up until August of last year. Or actually not August, we started the funding round in August and closed in December on the Friday before Christmas. Thank God. So that gave me like a very relaxing Christmas period, because funding rounds drag on and it is a whole other job in itself, but I'll go into all of that. Essentially, I talked to Business Insider about the pitch deck and they were really supportive of sharing that pitch deck and going through it all, and there are so many barriers within funding, lots of which that I won't face as like a very posh, as you can tell, person from a very privileged background, but also, you know, like funding stats for women in particular are a fucking shambles. So in the pandemic, it went down from a previous high of 2.8% of venture funding having gone to women, went down to 2.3%. So the 2.8% I think we can all agree wasn't that impressive. Like, really, like, there was just like a little push that could have been done to improve that, but that went down, so not ideal. One of the things I think is really important then is to be as transparent as possible, especially when breaking down like barriers to entry for these types of things, especially for women. And I also think that, you know, despite the fact that I won't face a lot of those kind of prejudices within the funding sphere and post revenue as well, so we'd already had the business for 2.5 years and had things to like prove our concept and all of that, I think the more transparency the better. There are also lots of amazing places out there that you can see more pitch decks, although when I started writing a pitch deck and making this pitch deck, it was like crickets. People only wanted to share their, it was like, to me, there was like a big gap between what I could find. It was like either really successful companies who've been like, we've made $1 billion from this, so like invest, and it's like, well, yeah, I'd fucking invest. Or it was success stories that you haven't seen yet, so like a part of like it being really helpful. It's like that middle ground that doesn't necessarily give a lot of transparency, because they're like, oh, how awkward if we now failed. And yeah, that would be awkward and also extremely traumatic and very sad, but I'd rather be as transparent as possible. And I also think it kind of shows a bit of an angle as to why we decided to raise, what the key points of that were, what our like values were within that raise. So I just want to take you through the pitch deck. Also clarify one very important thing: the colours alternated perfectly before we had to redact it. So this is a heavily redacted pitch deck, because if I put our numbers out there, it would cause, I mean, complete confidentiality breach. So we're not going to be doing that. But I also, after redacting it, the Business Insider article, although absolutely amazing and cannot thank them enough for doing that, it obviously was not going to show like a whole slide that's like redacted, whereas I wanted to show like the storyline of the whole pitch, if that makes sense. So I am here to do exactly that. Few disclaimers. I've already touched on the fact that I won't face a lot of the prejudices that people from a different background from me will face, but if you can see how bad like the funding stats for women in general are, imagine how bad they are for black women, for example. It will also be different for every single business. This isn't me telling you how to make a pitch deck, this is me telling you how I made my pitch deck. I am not a VC, I am an investor, I angel invest, so I do look at a lot of pitch decks, but I have only done this once. I'm not an expert. This is just an attempt at transparency. Right, so I'm going to go through it bit by bit and then I'll answer some questions as we go through. The rest of life as an entrepreneur, like, you need to be really good at delegating, and this was the time where I was like, I have my main job, which is what I do, so like the CEO of the business. On top of that, actually, like, every question potential investors ask, you have to have an answer for and find an answer for, and like lots of the time people would be like, oh, I wonder what you think about this, and I'd write like a whole Google Doc with the stats, the data on it, like how I thought that was going to evolve, like what we saw that as like as an effect to our business, like all of these things. Like, there was a lot to be doing at all times, but I learnt so much during the process. Within the pitches, you have to keep it kind of short and snappy. I would say story-led, like people invest in people's visions and stories, and that is a lot of the feedback I got. And I can say that, you know, this was a very successful and oversubscribed funding round. We pitched for 6 weeks because we wanted to talk to all the people that we wanted to talk to and thought would be good investors, and we ended those 6 weeks with 6 term sheets, so 6 essential offers of investment, which I'm told on the funding grapevine is very impressive. No, but we were really, really proud of that, and it's a great business, so I can see why. But especially if you don't know particularly which type of funding you'd like to get, so I thought, you know, if there was a great angel investor who really believed in us and could write the whole check and wanted to be like our one investor, then I'd consider that. Private equity is great, or like with growth capital in some ways. VCTs, venture capital trusts, like for under 7-year-old businesses, are really good. I knew fuck all, excuse my French, about this prior to raising. I had read bits of, like, I'd read books, I'd listened to podcasts, but I, like, when I have to start doing something, I like my life becomes about that thing. I'm a very all or nothing type of person, and I really like to know what I'm talking about before I talk about it. It became a very intense period, and I would say, just like, look up all of these different things. Again, this isn't me telling you this is what works, it'll be different for every business. This is what worked for me. Let's get into the pitch deck, or you'll just have me talking at you for hours, which is probably what you're gonna have anyway, to be honest. So, first slide, this was actually a photo from one of our first ever colours version of our core collection, so our seamless collection, which we still do today and people still love and is still an absolute bestseller, and the industry seems to love the design as well, so that's always good. I really loved this picture because not only was it something that showed, like, we love beautiful colours, we think making people feel great is really important, especially in like the gym where people often feel like very insecure, but also this was one of our first shoots, so it wasn't ever like for us, oh, we'll wait until we get the budget before we make sure we have models of different sizes or any of that. This was just like, this is TALA, and all of our shoots hit certain parameters that we set for ourselves as rules at the beginning. In our first ever shoot, we forewent marketing budget in order to have, I think it was around 10 models, and because we just wanted it to be like, you're invited, like, you're involved, and there's so much more we have to do on the inclusivity side, and that's what I'm really excited about within this kind of funding horizon too. But that to me was like, if investors, when I was like thinking about, you know, like partnering with investors, I was like, I don't want to have to persuade anyone that what we do, whether it's in terms of sustainability, diversity, inclusivity, attempting to do the right thing, often cutting margins to make things work because of the selling point we want for our customer that we feel like they'll be comfortable with, all of these things. I don't want to persuade anyone that that's the right thing to do. It is what our company is. I really wanted to make this deck so blatantly us, because that's who we are to our customer as well, and that's like the most important part of our business. And then I also, as you can probably see, I use these colours for the basis of the rest of the pitch deck because I thought they were cute and pretty and pastel, and I only had a weekend to make this because you want to get back on the business. I just made it with Canva. Like, I didn't want us to send it to anyone sensitive information to get out all of this, so I literally made this whole thing on Canva off a template. Slide 2. So as I said, I was very much told that people invest in people, people, and you can see why, especially within the past year or two, nearly 3 of the pandemic, that people are what make a business, because you can have the best concept in the world, a pandemic can fuck it, supply chain can fuck it, all of these things, sorry my language is so bad, but all of these things can get in the way. And if you have great people and a great ethos, that's what's going to make a business agile. It's what's going to mean that every time like a problem is thrown at you, you're able to recover. So like a little example, on Monday I got a call that our launch this week was fucking burgled from the port, not even from our warehouse, thankfully, great security, by like professionals, and they came in and the one security guard was outnumbered and very justifiably ran away, but all our stock is gone. So that is like a few $100,000 hit to the business, and all of these things are like the people sort that. It's not like you can't just come back again and again to the concept of the product. Those are central to the business, but ultimately for an investor you want to know that you're investing in people. So here is my full of myself slide number 1, and I essentially needed to show like this is the noise we've made so far, this is the kind of my personal brand, what you'd be investing in, these are my like accreditations, so Forbes 30 under 30, Oxford, Sustainable Business Accreditation from Harvard, like this is me, this is what you're putting your money behind. I mean, probably because if I gave them only the basis of my YouTube videos, they'd be like, she's very sarcastic and looks slightly lost. And then I wanted to do a slide on, rather than like my profile, my actual previous ventures. So this is probably the type of stuff that I don't really show that much on. That's such a lie, like I'm such a like, oh girl boss, look at all I'm doing. But this was very much like, you know, I've had a business before, so Shreddy, my other business, but actually showing like my understanding of the fitness industry, which is the industry that TALA is in, and just how successful that has been, because it's been a really successful business, especially like within the influencer space. It can be really easy to look at something and think like, oh, this is just merch, whereas like a lot of what I've concentrated on, like, and a lot of the reasons why I did want to grow the businesses and build out the teams and essentially move them far away from me, is because I really wanted longevity. I started my social media when I was like 18, whereas actually my career I'd say started a bit later, or I started my first business at 19, but like in the form that it actually went into. And this is what I want to do, and this is actually what I think I do far better than I do like the influencer stuff. So I think it would be really easy to like look at it a certain way, whereas actually the numbers kind of speak for themselves. Sorry to be like very full of myself, but like it is necessary in a pitch deck. And also women always apologize for it, and actually this is what I've done, so it's just numbers, like. And yeah, then I touch on the book and the podcast, just generally being like ventures, because also people want a background on the founder. In the next slide, slide 4, this was redacted further for the Business Insider interview, but I really wanted to show like what was on that top line as well, because it wasn't just cool facts about sustainability, but obviously it's fully redacted, so that wouldn't be very interesting for press. But essentially just wanted headline figures. So we had sales in the first 20 months, reachable email subscribers, CAC, so customer acquisition cost, UPT, which is units per transaction, so like another way of looking at basket size, customers, so number of customers, and returns rate, so the amount people love TALA. So, you know, even if it started as more merchy or people buying things, like the fact that the product speaks for itself so much, like the amount of people that return, looking at that against customer acquisition, all of these things. So like a headline of being like, we're a really great business and this is why you should invest in us. But then also the most important thing about TALA is our sustainability, and so we also wanted to put in there just how we kind of quantify that. And there's a huge piece on this that I really want to be done moving forwards, because it's kind of actually being able to represent the sustainability and the savings versus you going from one thing to another is a really, really big expensive tech piece, so only bigger companies can really do it, and we haven't been able to do it meaningfully so far. So we're doing a lot of the work in the sustainability and tech and R&D space, but we haven't been able to kind of share it to our customer in the way we'd like to. So that was really, really important. About TALA, this is kind of like the storyline slide, but just to let you know as well, we'd send the pitch deck to investors prior to them booking in a call with us, and then we wouldn't really go through the pitch deck. We'd give a pitch kind of separately. So, well, some of them we went through the pitch deck, but the majority of the time it would be like why I started TALA, what we think the opportunity is going to be, and then they'd ask questions, because sometimes they would have gone through the pitch deck, sometimes they wouldn't have had time to, very busy people. But a lot of the time, if they've taken your call, that's kind of, they've already looked through it, and or someone in their team has already looked through it and seen like an opportunity. So the About TALA side, this is the story. When people talk about creating pitch decks, they're like, name the problem within the industry and name how you're a solution to that problem. Name like the market size that like serves, all of these things. So TALA is a very story-based brand in terms of why I started it, whether I was an influencer or not when I started it. Like, the concept in itself has so much value, and it has amazing product market fit, and that is because of the story behind it. So just to give you a headline on that story, I personally started moving away from fast fashion. I have many sins to pay off in terms of, you know, I used to promote fast fashion on social media. It used to be like 75% of my income, and I like, yeah, really makes me feel a bit sick now. But essentially decided to move away from that and to stop that, and it wasn't something that I wanted to support. I cut deals with all fast fashion brands, and I think I essentially realized that, wait a second, I've moved away from like consuming loads and shopping non-transparent brands that, you know, you can't see the ethics or the sustainability, like all of this, and I'm still doing that on the activewear side. And I think it's like it's a mindset change, because activewear, you see it as essential, you see it as something that you need because you can't work out in your jeans or whatever it might be. Within activewear, like the booming industry that was in all the press and everyone's talking about it, and it's like sustainability was like completely neglected. Well, no, that is a complete lie, actually. It wasn't neglected. Where it was being done well and where it was being done meaningfully was at really expensive price points. So companies had done incredible things in the sustainable activewear space, and yet it was at a price point that was completely incomparable to brands that I won't mention that were essentially like not the fast fashion of activewear, but like very much at least the high street of activewear. And I just essentially realized that I didn't want to support that anymore, but that also there wasn't a meaningful alternative, because, you know, then when you look at sustainable fashion, you get pre-owned, you get rental. Neither of those things I get that excited about when it comes to activewear. Like, I do not think personally for me that that is a direct substitute for buying nice activewear when I do decide to shop activewear, because it's someone's old sweaty activewear, whether it's pre-owned or rented. So to me, that was like, this is being done so, like these two things, sustainable fashion, or more sustainable fashion, I think we should say, and activewear, two industries being talked about so much and booming. And it's like, how, when an industry is that booming, is there not a better option when it comes to being better or being more transparent or any of this? And if there is that option, it's about 2.5 times the price. So that was the idea behind TALA kind of coming into the space. It was like the argument that TALA wants to show you that you can ask more from your activewear. You can have it made from sustainably crafted materials in ethical factories that we share their accreditations and their locations, and also everything else about the product we craft as if it's like a regular product. So the fit, the flatteringness, the way the material feels, the sweat wicking, the breathability, like all of the look of it, the style, like we want you to feel like you are never compromising at all, and we take those compromises in-house, whether that's margins, whether that's the amount of time it takes to create a product, whether that's working with the tech on the actual crafting of the like materials, whatever that is, we'll make that happen to give people better options. And there's so much more down the road for that, but essentially that was like, how in such a booming industry is this not being done? And the reason behind it is because it's fucking expensive to do. You have to cut margins, and also data suggests that people don't care as much as they think they do, and therefore if there's huge price sensitivity, which a lot of the time there is when you're saying 2.5 times the price to access something, that is the thing that stops them caring as much or doesn't give them the option, because people can't afford a £100 pair of leggings. So as you can tell, I was not very good at keeping this part brief, but apparently the passion continuously came across, and I am very passionate about it. So moving on to the sustainability side, this is hefty, and I would say never have this much text in a slide, but I couldn't cut it down because I think it is so important, and it is the basis of our ethos, and the last thing I wanted was to ever have investors that... Yeah, exactly. The last thing I ever wanted to have was to have investors essentially that thought like the sustainability was like a cherry on top, or something we'd use to get to this point as like a really good sales point, or any of that. Moving forward with TALA, like this is the most exciting part, and how we do that, and like understanding that sustainability will be different for everyone, and for, you know, always the most sustainable option is in your wardrobe, and like we want to be able to shout that from the rooftops, and our investors not be like, oh, like and it's like, we're disrupting the larger market. We're very aware of the fact that we're not the most sustainable option for you. That most sustainable option is everything that's already in your wardrobe, keeping things from years ago that still work. But also, at the end of the day, understanding people's consumption habits and giving them better options is so, so, so important. And by saying that the mass market can't be more sustainable is essentially creating this schism between really like good people who don't consume and like who cut down a lot and who only buy from small businesses and sustainable materials. Great, like honestly cannot support that enough, but it creates this huge schism between that and people who consume loads and consume fast fashion and consume activewear from like these big brands and all of that. And there needs to be a middle ground, otherwise no one's ever gonna get from one to the other, and this needs to be done. And so like we kind of place ourselves here in a completely, what aims to be a completely transparent way. And I think that keeping those conversations open is so, so, so important, because otherwise you're just kind of negating consumer habits when it comes to the fact that like, okay, but to get someone from here to here, you have to have some sort of connection of understanding that there are better options, some sort of connection of being like, you know, cutting down consumption and having important conversations, which we continually try to do as well. But I never would have got to from here to, I wouldn't even say I'm over here, I'm like here, but I do try and make really good choices, but like I'll be the first to say like I'm nowhere near perfect in it. The only way I got from like here to here is being like, this is the core of our brand, this is the basis we build thing off. It's not a cherry on top, it's not like a sprinkle of like Salt Bay, like we'll just throw that in there and market it. We actually market it far less than the work we do, and to me, investors needed to be able to see that in order to be able to understand the decisions we'll be making at every board meeting, etc. So then the page 7, so the inclusivity and diversity slide, this is not necessarily the done thing, and that's not me being like, oh, pat on the back, but I think that like I have very strong values, and so does my managing director, and so does the whole team, in terms of like exactly what type of company we want to build, and we're gonna get it wrong, and there are things that we can do better 100%, but there are also like, we want to make sure we do the best we can and show what that means to us, because it's going to cost money sometimes, it's not going to be the most profitable option sometimes, and that's something we stand behind. So we actually really wanted to make it clear just how important these things were, not necessarily just in like lip service or performativeness, and actually being like, this is our external stance on diversity and inclusivity, and like I cannot say enough how much more we need to be doing on that. We've started from a great point, but actually there's so much more down the line, and I'm very, very excited for it. And also then adding in the internal point, because I think a lot of the time when you talk to investors, it's like, this is what makes us look great, and it's like, this is what makes us actually have like a great ethos. And so we wanted to share as well our internal diversity statistics, and that was just as important, because it was like, this is what we stand for, and this is what company we want to build. And one of the most exciting things for me within this funding round was like, we very much did it like, we were supported by the best types of investors to like do it our way. For example, like we ended this round, like we got female leadership, so we've got a female CEO, me, we've got a female managing director, we have 71% female shareholding, we have 67% female board, we have an 81% female team, and that is to make clothes for women. And you really think that this might be like the norm at this stage within the industry, but if you look at every single, like especially within the activewear space, they are not owned by women and they are not run by women. We have like whole conversations about like camel toes in meetings, and I think that like that's the type of company we want to create in like the least creepy way possible. And so I think that actually having these, like sticking to our guns, being like, this is, yeah, we're going for this money, but actually the right people will find that really exciting, and our investors did find that really exciting and do find it really exciting. And I'm really, really proud of how we were able to do this round, and it's all thanks to the amazing people who were involved, investors, the team, and everyone. And I think we've created a really, really, really special company, which is absolutely not off the back of me, and I could not be prouder of everyone involved for that. Then the next slide, so page 8, so really important to show the market size. This is all redacted, so we can't show you it, but essentially it's showing our customer data versus the customer data of the wider market, so looking at sustainability and activewear and those cross sections. And we used a variety of different insight platforms. We'd also done some customer research, so that was useful to include there. TALA HQ, this is completely different now in terms of like the whole team. But essentially this was in August, and what I really wanted to show was like the really important parts of our business are, you know, managing it, so all of the operations and everything in that, but brand and partnerships so important for us, and also social media and digital native marketing, and also our product. So that is everything that it kind of comes down to. So here, once again, investors invest in people, and I essentially wanted to show part of like a subsection of our team and those real key points that we think are very important, and show their experience as well, because that is going to be, you know, what makes people feel confident if they don't necessarily know the people. So for example, Morgan, our managing director, you know, has an amazing educational background, and also went to INSEAD, like the top business school ever, and is insanely intelligent, but has also worked at amazing places like Farfetch, LVMH, Spoke, all of these places that like really add up to being like, she knows what she's doing and we know what we're doing. Then Sarah, I actually worked with Sarah I've worked with her for like 5 years now. She was originally on my management team when I was doing like social media things, and then she'd left there, and then she left the place that she was headhunted from to come to TALA, and yeah, and has been with us ever since. So was a founding member, so wanted to kind of show a snapshot of founding member too, and like just like the background we have in terms of like, we know influence marketing, we know social media, and that's something that is very important in nowadays industry. And then Jess, so our head of product. So I, long story, one day I'll tell it all, but essentially I partnered with factory partners to create TALA, and then bought them out of the partnership over a year ago now, between December and April of last year. And in that in-between time, I hired part of a new management team to head up TALA, including Morgan and including Jess, who was head of buying at Sweaty Betty. And so really created like the ideal team for like, this is what I think is going to make our team incredible. And Jess has sustainability qualifications as well, and is really hot on that, and will be like, you know, like within the industry there are certain things we're like, oh, but we could do this, and then it's technically, it ticks these boxes, and people like things to look better than they actually do better. And Jess will be like, no, because if you actually think about this, like this takes double the amount of water, and if we do this, the paneling means it's this much waste, and like all of this. So just a like snapshot. Again, this is very different now. Yeah, just kind of wanted to show a bit of the kind of team and what they'd be investing in. Then TALA's timeline. So essentially there have been like really key parts in TALA's history, and I wanted to kind of like show the exciting parts of those. So key points of like product expansion or partnerships, being shortlisted for best activewear brand, like against like Nike and Lululemon and Sweaty Betty, all of these various different things. I just wanted to get a snapshot of like where TALA has gone from here to now, and I think that's particularly valuable in terms of just like giving a bit of color to your business now, and also understand like investors are not going to expect you to have had like a smooth sailing amazing concept that always worked. Like there are going to be things that like didn't work, or things that worked way better than you expected, so you didn't have enough stock, so things crashed, and like all of this. And actually sharing that is really important, because you're going to be with, it's not just like you're showing someone something, you get the money and then you run off with it. Like these are now your essentially your partners. You're going to be working with them to create an amazing company. Showing them the different ways you've dealt with problems in the past and everything is so valuable. Then we put in a slide on social engagement. Social media has been hugely important, I probably don't need to say, but for TALA in terms of organic growth, both in its own right and obviously from when I started it, but the organic growth of TALA, like beyond me, has been something full of books. Like it has been insane, and that kind of that is backed up by our customer data in terms of repeats and in terms of product reviews and all of this. And so, you know, we really know social, and we haven't even done that meaningfully so far. We've had like 3 ambassadors for a trial period. We haven't fully gone into influencer marketing, and the numbers we've seen is just like amazing. That was one of the things that we wanted to just kind of show, like we get this, and when we have the money to put there, like watch us do great things. And also, you know, showed the fact that TikTok asked us to be their first shopping trial for live shopping there, a number of different things. Then page 12, so testimonials. I don't think this is necessarily a normal thing, like people often include their Trustpilot scores, so ours is like excellent. That was in our press releases and stuff. But the important thing here was I was like, the TALA audience is so interactive and so passionate and all of these things that I actually wanted to be like, rather than just being like people love us, actually being like, I'm going to ask right now. You won't remember, but I put up a story back in like right at the end of July before we started pitching, so it said 24th of July, so probably around then. Put up a story being like, tell me what you love about TALA. And obviously it's an angled question, but getting what people love about TALA like this was so rewarding. And so I said, there's no better way to know what people love about TALA than to ask them here and now. That's what we did. Here's a snapshot of answers within 2 hours. It was actually like, I left it for 2 hours and then came back, so even within like not much time at all, there was like so much love, and it literally filled me with joy in my little like hole where I was making this pitch deck. Page 13, we wanted to show where kind of the business goes from here in terms of partnerships. So we think partnerships are really important, and collaborations and everything, and essentially just including bits like that that are like important to your brand and your business and your strategy and your business model, obviously very important. Then did a slide on our ambassador program. This was just a trial, so essentially we kind of just wanted to highlight like this is what we did. Also with the fitness influencer, sustainability influencer and fashion influencer, we trialed this with like a three-pronged thing. We didn't have a lot of budget. Lots of these brands have a huge amount of budget, but we like, especially from like starting, we had to slice our marketing budget to be able to afford the sustainability at that price point. So it's been like later for us to develop these kind of aspects of the business and these channels. I wanted to kind of show how that had been like thought out and the different types of people that can kind of represent TALA, because there will be people who come to TALA and are more like from a fashion or fitness background and don't really care about the sustainability, and we can almost like trick them into making better decisions by just having such great product. But there will also be people who are like, actually no, I'm gonna have this really important conversation with you, and like, why do you do this, and why is your packaging this, and why is this? And those are the people also who add to so much to TALA's community, and also that we're really kind of proud to have as part of our community. Then you need to have something about your competitors within the pitch deck. Say what you will, we put different people in here based on the fact that actually we don't have any direct competitors, and be really careful about saying that, because sitting here and being like, we don't have any competitors because we're the best, is not what I'm saying in the slightest. However, of what I have seen, there is not a single activewear brand out there that is doing what we are doing in sustainability, and I mean not just sustainable fabrics, I mean every single area of the production process, and is also doing it at our price point. So that is saying that there are incredible people out there doing amazing things in terms of sustainability. However, they are not our direct competitors, because very different people will buy a £40 tracksuit from us than will buy an £150 tracksuit from Pangaea, for example. Sorry, I hope I'm not liable for anything within this, otherwise we will have problems. That is not what the funding is for. And in terms of the more activewear side, so Gymshark, Able, Adenola, those were just examples of UK-based brands that are, because UK is by far our biggest market, even though we have big other markets, was essentially saying that actually we go to compete with these brands as well, essentially, like no hard feelings, like compete within like an industry sense, in terms of the fact that we are providing activewear at their price point. So our concept is that we either blow people completely out of the water on values and sustainability and transparency, aka the activewear brands that are not touching on those things and are at our price point, or we blow people completely out of the water on price point and making that sustainability more accessible, even when we're doing even when we're kind of hitting all of those touch points and those ethoses that we build off of in terms of that sustainable basis. So this was our kind of showing a different variety of people within the industry. I'll show, our last slide goes into this a bit more, but in a slightly different way. But essentially with this, I really wanted to show, like, look, there are people doing amazing things. Like, there are people who have amazing designs and their sportswear is amazing and you look great in their activewear and they've got beautiful colours. There are people who are doing amazing things in terms of like sustainability and how they translate that to the customer and all of this. We're in the middle but touching the good parts of both of those things, and like I usually don't shout on social media about this because it's quite hard, especially as a woman to be like, these are all the things we're doing like amazingly, but actually this is what we do and this is where we sit within the industry. A lot of people also do those like crisscross, not the technical term, I mean someone who's sitting here talking to you about pitch decks should very much know what the crisscross graph is called, but essentially like one axis saying like one thing, so it could be like sustainable to non-sustainable, and then another one being like price point to this. Like, we very much could have done that as well. We decided to do a slightly different Venn diagram lower down, and also because different people have different things that sit in different places. But essentially what ours would have been like in terms of that would, Pangaea would be kind of higher up on the sustainability side and higher up on the price point. Girlfriend Collective would have been slightly lower down on the price point, still much higher than us, and then the other activewear brands would be lower on that sustainability point, but also lower on the price point, all of these things. But then also the fact that like we try and blow like really great activewear brands who I shall not name, but make like incredible, really high quality activewear that's like £90 for a pair of leggings. We really try and hit their quality point, so I think there are like slightly different axes as well, but essentially that's what we kind of wanted to touch on in terms of competitors. And it is important to show also like market proof. Competitors are not a bad thing, they are a good thing, because it shows, unless you're fucking reinventing the wheel, it shows proof of concept. It shows people either want activewear or sustainability or both or any of these things. So Pangaea doing amazingly does not take up our space, if that makes sense. We're at a completely different price point. It shows that people care about things. It also shows that people love like bright colors. It shows, you know, like there's so many different parts of proof that come with product market fit and looking at competitors and all of these things. So having competitors is not a bad thing in a pitch deck especially, and lying or kind of making out like you don't have competitors is never gonna do you well. In fact, it's gonna cause a problem. Also like moving bits around on your graph to show like actually their price points here, or like they're not really this, when it's not true, is just not going to help you, because you're going to get called out on it. You're much better off to be like, yeah, I can see why you would think that we would be interchangeable, but this is what makes us better, or we're like really concentrated on customer experience, or we're really concentrated on sustainability, or we're really transparent with our customer, or we're community based. Any of those things that can set you apart, you should be thinking about those anyway. So lying about where people are with the fucking X graph is never going to work. So then don't you worry, we are so close to the end, and I will stop rambling at you. But page 16, so essentially this was pointing out our global potential. So part of the investment is essentially going to go to global expansion. So we ship globally and have amazing customers all around the world. We don't have localized sites, we don't have localized currencies, we don't have localized return logistics, we don't have any of the touch points that you'd really want to have for a fully global brand. So as much as we ship worldwide and have people who like, I look at some of like the US and Europe orders and I'm like, wow, I'm like, thank you. But essentially that is largely based on things like organic social media, being able to reach better things, and a lot of the opportunity for us is actually meaningfully taking it global. And as a company, we care hugely about customer service and customer experience. And so part of that isn't just being like, oh yeah, well we ship globally, so we're like a global brand. It's actually about being like, okay, well if we're expanding to the US, just being like, yeah, well they can buy it is obviously not enough. If someone's, you know, needs to have like full return logistics and to be able to, you know, like warehousing, all of these things, we essentially needed to prove, because it was where we wanted to use the money, we essentially needed to prove the potential for our global expansion. So even if you don't have international sales, you can use other companies that are doing amazingly in a sector and how you are differentiated from them. What's your value proposition versus theirs? So we essentially showed here our international following in terms of social media, so Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, these various different things, and our international sales, so how that translated. And we have an impressively high amount of international sales, considering we don't have anywhere near the logistics of bigger brands in those areas. So we wanted to show that essentially when we do that expansion properly, it's not like a shot in the dark. Then the final side of this is a bit complicated, and this was really unique to us, and this was based on my conversations with our managing director, Morgan, and we were essentially being like, what does make TALA so special? Like, how are we able to have these margins and be successful in terms of this and do this, 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 and this? We really essentially kind of tried to pinpoint this middle bit that puts us in that sweet spot. And this took a lot of conversations. Essentially, within the industry at the moment, when you're looking at like the activewear industry, or looking at this kind of sweet spot of opportunity, and this is the slide obviously we call the unique opportunity. So you're looking at activewear, you're looking at digital marketing, which is essential to having a scaling brand at the moment, and then customer values alignment. And one thing I also pointed out in my pitch was that Gen Z millennial crossover audience are people who are really care about brand values, and they're also the audience who are the earlier adopters of activewear. So how the fuck have people only put this together at a price point that is largely inaccessible to these people. It doesn't make any sense from a business point of view, for a disrupting the industry point of view, any of this. So that's a slightly separate point, but I kind of pointed that out in my pitch as well. So we made a Venn diagram because we were thinking of all of these things, and essentially it was like, it just makes sense as a Venn diagram because it's three separate things. It's not this, it's not, you know, there were many ways that we could do it well, and this may make people angry by certain things, placements, or certain things existence within the deck, but I'm going to take you through it. So I'm actually going to read it to you, so you don't need to, because I always watch YouTube up on like a TV and then I'm like, so I'm going to read you through the deck. So not the whole deck, you're probably like, please stop talking. So essentially, number one, activewear. So activewear is a massive market and one of the fastest growing. As we learn more about physical and mental health and workplaces become more casual, so once again that move from the pandemic that has sped up the kind of flexible working and remote working and people being more casual and comfortable all the time, which was never a thing for like older generations, the activewear opportunity remains up and to the right, as in leading digital marketing. So we can do paid ads and search and send emails. We better almost every benchmark on these platforms, so in terms of like industry averages, but our superpower is in our organic reach and ability to engage customers and influencers on social media, a new way to market. So essentially digital marketing is like, it's no secret, this isn't me giving away business secrets. If you look into any business, the way they're selling things is doing this, that and the other. The way they're reaching customers is doing this, that and the other. So whether we're talking about, you know, really important conversations and actually saying like, consume less, all of this, or whether we're saying, actually, we've just released this, we'd like you to buy it, which is absolutely part of what we say as well, that requires you to engage a customer. It's not a given, and you'll see huge brands now that you'll go onto their social media and they have almost no engagement. People follow them because, you know, they like their product, but it's that difference that really, really, really makes you create brands that actually mean something. And we also, in the digital marketing space, so paid search, performance marketing on ads, on Facebook, for example. We haven't really done many other touch points in terms of YouTube, TikTok and everything, but we're starting them now. We do them really well, and every company that we worked with in terms of like agencies or consultancies or any of these things looks at our stats and is like, for example, like our digital marketing agency that we've used for ads before literally was like, if you put all the investment money just into this, like you could hit all of your numbers alone, like without all of the rest of the marketing. So there's great opportunity there, and we really wanted to prove that because that's a exciting part. And then customer values alignment. So our customers care about our sustainability mission and our values almost as much as we do, and they care about building a lasting relationship with us because we price sustainability to fit into their daily lives. And like all the deepest relationships, we don't shy away from the hard conversations. So once again, those, if you can see those brands down in the customer values alignment ones, those are ones that I think like really, really, really do well in terms of the customer values alignment, having those conversations and all of that. And then we've essentially cross-sectioned them with the other ones, so it's a bit complicated, but essentially like activewear, customer values alignment, the ones that meet in the middle, both of those are far, you know, whether that customer values alignment is sustainability or like for Rafa, like there's a huge community aspect, all of this, like that cross section. Activewear obviously has those big players in there, leading digital marketing, Pangaea and Gymshark doing amazing things at the moment in that space. Within the leading digital marketing thing, Skims, Charlotte Tilbury, Shein. Let me explain the presence of Shein. Much as there is also a fake meat brand there, that just does insane digital marketing and customer values alignment and all of that, and I just wanted to show like excitement. This was actually about being like, you know, we had investors ask us as well, like Shein, and it's because it's not like this brand is an amazing brand, it's when you're pitching to people, the way you'll get people interested is also being like, you know, those companies that are doing really well at the moment that you probably wish you'd invested in. So the likelihood is the investors we've gone to would like, we wanted ones that, you know, have values like ours. So that's a separate thing, but being like, look at what's exciting right now. Digital marketing, the ones that are smashing it, these are smashing it. Like that's the end of it. I do not support Shein in the slightest. I think their practices in terms of stealing from designers, in terms of sustainability, in terms of suspected ethics are dog shite, but their digital marketing is leading, and essentially what you want to do in your pitch deck as well is essentially show like things that are doing amazingly and not be like, this is why we're better, but actually being like, this is the market proof, or this is a business that I'm sure you wish you had invested in. So Pangaea, Gymshark, Lululemon, like all of these, and show where you fit within those and where your opportunity is. So that's just like complete transparency in terms of the inclusion of those things and why we represented it that way. And yeah, you can have a little look at that more. You might disagree with some things. You might be like, fuck off, Shein, why would you put that in there? They might have leading digital marketing, but they also have leading practices of bullshit. Like, fine, great. That's just my explanation for why that was in there. And then we have thank you at the end, because thank you, and redacted email address and telephone number for obvious reasons. So that is, I was gonna say whistle stop tour, but it's just like not a whistle stop tour at all. I've never done a whistle stop tour in my life. I do like a tour of every fucking brick of every building, because I have an inability to be quiet. But before I leave you to go about your day, actually likelihood is lots of you have already gone about your day, but to the people who are still here, who have maybe left this up on their TV while they are like cooking or something, I am also going to answer a few questions because people asked them. And also, if you have requests for other videos, please do let me know. My top priority is this company and this investment and the excitement now the investment is in, and all of the things we want to do that are like really meaningful and great. But when I restarted my YouTube channel, it was all about being like, here I can talk about things if, you know, if I want to vlog, or if I, you know, I'm vlogging and showing like some meetings or some product stuff or whatever it might be. And we are moving into an office next month, which is so exciting. So there'll definitely be more content there. I want to show like ins and outs of that. Maybe I'll even get a professional videographer in to give some insight. So just let me know if there are any things I can help with. I am never going to be like a good YouTuber anymore, but that's good for me because I'm an all or nothing person, as I've said. And like when I started back up on YouTube, I was like, what's my next video gonna be? Okay, I'm gonna plan this one, I'll schedule this one into this day. And it's like, no. Sit down, shut up, do your job. So let me answer some questions. How did you know it was the right time to raise capital? So it'll be different for everyone. Obviously at the beginning is a very good time for people. At the time that we decided to raise, essentially, we've been doing really well. We're profitable. Lots of many exciting things. A business to be profitable this early on is amazing. And essentially, so we have the money to put back into the business. That being said, with our like first mover advantage for exactly those points I said on why essentially I think that we are at a sweet spot in the industry that no one else is, that felt like a real opportunity to push forward and go. Like we've been shouting about our exciting things for like 2.5 years now, and I'm kind of surprised that no one's come in and been like, we're gonna do it too. And that is probably because there are times where it's really not very lucrative, and you could, like, as I said, people don't always care that much, even if they say they do, and therefore there are better ways that you can make money. And so and also people have tried to come in, and it's a really, really tough space, and it's often because of the fact that we have amazing influencer marketing. We have my influencer marketing, which doesn't take out of the budget because I don't charge the company for it. And like we really, really pay attention to product. We have amazing people on board, all of these things. It just felt like we've done so well and the opportunity is huge. Like now is the time to push forward. Yes, we can like self-fund and continue to self-fund, but actually really making sure we have the tech piece there, the customer experience is right there, the inclusivity point is right there. All of these things was like, now's the time. And we also have an incredible team. Like based on, I shouted a lot on social media last year, what's new? But in terms of like building the foundations for the business moving forward, and that was what a lot of this is about. We had our like first birthday in the pandemic with like 4 team members, and now we're 12 full-time, 16 including contractors, and are likely to be 25 full-time in 6 months. So it's like, there's a lot of change and there's a lot of excitement, and now felt like the time to do all of those things meaningfully so we can get exactly what we want to our customer in terms of values, in terms of product, in terms of also getting to the mass market. Like when we do more product now, it's not about more product for the same customers in the slightest. Oh, hiccup. It's about disrupting that mass market and saying, no, you're buying those £42 pair of leggings because you think that is the best option you can get based on the fact that actually you can't access anything with better values because it's higher price point. No, hold my drink. Obviously didn't put it like that in the pitch because it sounded a bit unhinged. How did you find the right people for the round? How long did this process take? So in terms of being put in touch with the right people and getting in front of the right people, I am not going to pretend that this is from like this base point of having, you know, no revenue or just an idea or any of these things. We are post revenue, and that is really, really, really important for me to say. We have 2.5 years of proven concept, an amazing team, all of these things. I have a previous business before that the numbers very much speak for themselves, and so this would be slightly different. So I had been contacted continuously for the whole time that I've had TALA so far. I thought for a while longer we would be self-funded, because I was just like, I grew up at the beginning of the industry with like Gymshark, for example, and they were always self-funded, and to me that was like they're not anymore, but like they did insanely well, like bootstrapped, and to me that was like, okay, this is like crown of glory. I don't know what word I'm trying to say, but a badge of honor, that's the one. A crown of glory. So this is like a badge of honor for like this, and I was like, actually that's not the right thing for our business. Like we need like to be able to get to where the tech we want it to be, and like the product and all of these things, like it's different. So I've been contacted a lot by investors. So some of it was people of like those types of background, and others with people like, I'd met so many people within the past year specifically who were founders. So a lot of our people who came on to be our angel investors, so Michelle Kennedy, people like Debbie Wasco, so many other people who I had essentially, you know, met and then like shamelessly went to them like, we're doing a funding round, who would you recommend? Because also wanted to go for people whose values are very much aligned with. So once again, not going to pretend it's like from the beginning or from day dot. I cannot give you advice on that because I haven't done it and now will never do it, but that was the process for us. And then lots of people, we pitched to some investors who were like, we love this, but the check size is too small, so let us put you in touch with these people who we often work with on deals, or who we often do like the Series B to their Series A, aka like the next round when it's like a bigger check size. So that was kind of the process. And then a lot of fucking cold emailing, like a lot. I shamelessly messaged brands and was like, can I speak to your founder please? Places like Morgan, for example, has a lot of experience in businesses before that have raised funding, so going to people that she'd previously raised funding with or previously pitched to and not raised funding with, and just being like, we have an opportunity, do you want to hear it? And then sending them the pitch deck. I must have sent like hundreds of emails, and there were also people that we talked to and we were like, this isn't aligned from both sides. But that was really, there were also like so many amazing funds that we talked to, and I could not be happier with what we ended up with. And the process took, well, the pitching took 6 weeks, and as I said, 6 weeks, 6 term sheets, and then the close of the round was from like September to December, which is much longer than it should be. But there were a load of things that went on in that time, not in terms of like the round, but in terms of like actual running of the business as well. Would love to know how you explain how you'll spend investors' money. So this is really important. Lots of people think, and I think I thought before, that you give someone a pitch deck and then you're like, to give me the money, this is how I'm going to spend it. No, 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 no. You model every single penny that you're going to spend. So we, and by we I mean largely Morgan and the finance team and every single sector. So like the influencer marketing team would say, like, if you plugged this much in, this is what we can expect to get from like this is what the CPM would be, this is what the CPA would be, this is what this, and it probably goes up on this curve, and therefore the assumption is if you stick this much in, it will go up on this curve, so it will place you at this point. Like, it is so complicated. It took about 2 weeks, I believe, to build the model, and that was in the 2 weeks of pitching, whilst also talking to people and being like, it's coming. And essentially that was the next 3 years of TALA and exactly where each penny of the money goes. So that was quite the piece of work. And then after we kind of finished it, I was like, God, that was like a fucking business like masters or something, and I have a music degree, so I am ill-equipped. But it was really, really interesting. And it also, I've always, you know, we've always had quite strict strategies before. I'm a planner. I like to know exactly what our releases are for the whole year and all of this, that and the other, and what the forecasting is and how that relates to each other, and if like the basket size changes, how that changes the forecasting, because our customers, like, I like this stuff. However, I've never done it in this much detail, and actually having that now in terms of like, this moves to here on this date, this budget goes to this on this date, this and this, it's now like a manual for your future. And then you're also like, each board meeting, you can essentially be like, okay, this assumption was actually like slightly skewed in this direction, and then you change it. So essentially you build a full model, and that is a hefty piece of work. And we used finance for it, outsourced finance, in-house people who can do finance, product, merchandising, marketing, CRM, like everything, to create this model that essentially says this is where every single penny of the investment goes to. You cannot just take investment and then they're like, enjoy, knock yourself out, go on a yacht ride. And obviously it will be different, but that's VC, so I don't know if you did it exclusively by angel investors what that would include. How do you create the story you want to tell in your pitch? the story is the reason the business was started. So it will be different for everyone. There will be ones that are more story based than others, but essentially like, why did you start that business? What problem are you trying to solve? Or, you know, it doesn't need to be like some huge problem of like flying to the moon. It can literally be like, I often think of like Estrid, for example, that disrupted like the women's health, like razor. I shouldn't say women's health, like I don't think razors are women's health. But you know, like you'd usually go to Boots and buy like a Venus razor. However, if you know, like Estrid came along and was like, actually, why are we going to the shops every few weeks to get a razor? Why are they not vegan? Why are they all plastic? Like all of this, and just like tweaked that, and then was like an amazing concept. Like there's so much opportunity in solving the problems that you have. And so I think like the story is often based on that. How did you manage your time raising the round whilst also running the business? I disappeared off the face of the earth, I'll be completely honest. I think a lot of my friends still think I hate them, and also it was very confidential. It was tough. Like I think it was the toughest time I've ever had working, like tougher than starting TALA in my finals with like 40,000 words due and 5 exams, like tougher than any of that. So yeah, I don't have a lot of useful advice on that. It's just like everyone who I've spoken to who's done a funding round, because you have to be, as I've said, like you can't delegate, you have to be at the beck and call of everyone you're talking to. You have to like get like a fucking write-up for like whatever like you might be discussing in the next meeting. You might have 5 meetings with someone before you decide to take their, or before they give you a term sheet. You might have 1 meeting, you might have 10, you might need to do 3 different models. Like it's like there's a reason we wanted to get back onto the business so quickly, and it was really tough, and personal life just had to take a hit, to be honest, and so did mental health and everything. And like as I said, like I'm very much like deconstructing that now, because I found it very hard to go back from that to being like averagely busy, and that's another story in itself. But it was really hard. And it's, do you ever get into that mindset where it's like, okay, I'm low and I'm stressed and this is my life right now, but like you can be high in the low, if that makes sense? You're like just pushing on. You're just like like when I was doing my finals, I listened to loads of Billie Eilish, because it's like mildly depressing but also like like it keeps going. It's not like lulling around. That was the feeling I had for this. It was like, I'm excited, we'd have some amazing calls, but I'd also get to the end of every day and I'd be like drained because you've been talking for that long as well. But I was like, this is good, I'm fine. I'm not fine, but I'm fine. Anyway, tough. Hardest financial questions. There was a lot of tough stuff. I think this was the first time I was like, oh, I really need to keep reading. I haven't been to business school and I have studied a lot of the different areas and learnt a lot along the way, but especially when it came to like model creating and understanding the exact assumptions of, you know, everything. It's intense, and I only have a maths AS level is the highest I go up to, and like I consider myself quite a mathsy person. I haven't been to business school, I don't know a lot of these things, and actually a lot of it is an art, not a science. Like it's different for every business, especially when like you've only tested it on this, like how does it look like on this, like all of these things. So a lot. What qualities were you looking for in potential investors? So I've talked about this a lot, but essentially we wanted people who didn't just think what we were doing was exciting because it was profitable and revenue generating and talked about a lot in the press, and like had me that gets a lot of press, or more so than founders of my size or whatever, but actually understood like the inherent value of disrupting this industry. And we were I was really excited by the people who we have on board. So we raised funding from a number of different people, but the co-leaders of the round were Active Partners, a private equity growth fund, and Venrex Investments, who are a VCT, so venture capital trust. I think as well, like the funding world is so skewed in terms of like towards tech and being like, oh, if we invest 10k now, it will be worth $1 billion in a few years. And actually it's very different when you're in consumer. And I really wanted to be working with people who understood the value of quality side and all of those different things we like to get right within consumer. And so both Venrex and Active have amazing experience within consumer goods, so things like activewear and all of that. And it is a very different type of business, and I kind of, my view on like investors, whether angel investors, whether VC, whatever, was essentially they would be really exciting people to have in the room, and that's what I believe we got. So I'm really excited about it, and we have really interesting conversations, and it has added only joy and excitement and power and resources and everything to the business, and people who also understood that like the sustainability space isn't just like a black and white like either like badge of honor that you gain and like never lose because you just say you do, or you know, there are things that you really have to do. That this is probably a good example, like we do front seams on our leggings. We recently did a post on Instagram that was why it explained that like if we don't do that, then it creates double the waste and it means that you have to have double the cost price, which we couldn't absorb in cut and sew type of leggings, so we would have to up our prices, and that's something that we didn't believe was like, we didn't want to stand by and didn't really think was like in line with our customer. So like things like that are a decision that also like people don't necessarily know about. Like we could have done non-front seam leggings and no one would have said anything. Like I only found out about that from our product people who are amazing and so hot on sustainability and like will not just go for the things that look good when they actually aren't as good as they say. For me, that was really, really, really important to have people who understand that like you're not always going to get the reward for doing the right thing, and actually we haven't even shown half of the stuff we've done yet, and being able to share that and not share that and take the hit like financially to be able to do a better thing for the planet or for the ethos of the brand or like whatever is important. And so that was so important when it came to investors. Also would say my last thing kind of on that is like when you're doing the pitch, and once again like I don't have a lot of experience with this, I only have like my intensive course of my own doing. What I got a lot of credit for was like sticking to our guns. Often in like the second and third meeting, people would be like, so when are you doing men's, or like when are you going into specialists like cycling equipment, like it's a huge industry at the moment, and actually just being like we're not, like it's as in we may do down the line, like there's nothing, you know, that rules these things out, but actually our focus is on making sure we do what we do well, and then pinpointing those areas of expansion, which for us were best in class talent, so hiring amazing people, global expansion and funding inventory, while we're kind of going more to the mass market and kind of going to more people rather than the same people more, and actually just saying like actually that's not within this funding horizon, or you know actually we'd love to do that, or actually that's not, you know, part of the idea. So that was really, really important, and I got a lot of credit for that within the pitching process, so I would give that as advice. Thank you so much for watching. I'm sorry this is so long. Please let me know any content requests. I'm also planning the next season of my podcast at the moment, so let me know anyone interesting who you'd like to see me talk to, or any changes you'd like for that. It's going to be a lot more informal, a lot more story based, and I'm also hoping to film it for YouTube too. So thank you so much. Thank you so much for your support so far. Thank you for all the love on the investment stuff. Also like this new vest type thing is like, my armpits feel so aired, which is nice for like a cable knit jumper, because I get very hot and sweaty when I'm filming. So you're welcome to sharing. I hope you have a lovely day, and hopefully I will see you in not too long, because I will not slack. Bye. Bye. Goodbye.